I'm Margaret Jones, Director of Public Health. It's important to understand that the new measures have been introduced in Sefton and Merseyside because of the very significant rise in cases of COVID-19. In Sefton alone, we've seen over 900 new cases of COVID in the past 7 days. So these new measures are really important. They're there to try and help us reduce the spread of the virus through the community. What's really important to remember is that it's now against the law in Sefton and other Merseyside authorities to meet up with people that you don't live with in your own home or garden. It's also against the law to go to another area and go to someone else's home and meet people either in their home or in their garden. There are some exceptions to the no household mixing rule. If you're providing childcare to a family member. So that's still allowed, but it's for children who are 13 years and under. The other exception would be if you had to provide care for a vulnerable adult, you would be allowed to continue to do that. Be very careful that you still, where possible, maintain social distancing, that you maintain all the sort of hygiene measures that we've often talked about washing hands and good respiratory hygiene. All of that's really important. People often ask about bubbles and how they will work. A support bubble is something that we can form if you have a single adult household. So if you're living alone, to get additional support, you can join another household of any size and form a support bubble. If you meet up in a large gathering, you will be asked to break that gathering up, and if you don't do that, you can be served a fixed penalty notice, and the first notice would be £100, but that can escalate. If people re-offend, it would be £200 on the second offence, and that will actually double up to a maximum of £3,200 for each offence. So that's really not what the police or the local authority want to be doing. We'd much rather everybody work together. It really is a last resort, but it will be something that is imposed if people continually fail to observe these regulations. During times of service, when you go to the pub or a restaurant, you'll find now that you can only be served if you're sitting at a table. You won't be able to go to the bar and queue up. You'll also find that venues will take details, ask your name and address and contact details, and that's to help the NHS test and trace system. It's also a regulation now that venues have to have a QR code. So if you've downloaded the NHS Test and Trace app, you'll be able to go in and scan that code, and that will automatically record that you've been to that venue. And that can be used if you were to be identified as someone who had been in contact with somebody who then goes on to develop COVID. Obviously, for our businesses, it's a huge undertaking. It's lots of work for them to do, and we know that they need support in doing that. So from a council perspective, we've got a team of environmental health officers and other public health officers who support businesses. If you're contacted by NHS Test and Trace and you're told that you need to isolate, either because you've been tested positive for COVID, or if you're a contact of someone who's tested positive for COVID, it's really important that you follow that advice to self-isolate. And self-isolation means you stay at home. It doesn't mean you can pop around to the shops, or you can go and visit a friend, or you can go to the chemist. If you find that it's really difficult and you can't manage those things, then please contact Sefton Contact Centre, and depending on what your particular needs are, we'll try our very best to put you through to people who can support you.